you see it going?
Yeah, for me, yeah, that the reason I focused on that because such a small thing changed my life. Right, a sixth grade teacher said, "You know what? You're kind of smart," and I believed her. I said, "I'm smart." Right, so she gave me that sort of opportunity. She sparked the idea in my mind. So that's why my first thing is the scholarship fund, because there are a ton of very intelligent kids that's coming out of these urban areas who can make it all the way if given the opportunity. And so it's a challenge that I gave to my mom, and my mom is so involved with it. Like she gets on the bus and she takes these kids to their to interview with colleges, and now we're starting to see kids graduate from college, and that sort of feeling, when it's real. I'm not just sitting home writing a check and for whatever reason to make myself feel good or anything like this. It's something that I really want to do, and I'm really into and excited about. So
it's effective philanthropy, in other words.
Right. I mean, yeah, and I'm seeing the results. I'm seeing, we were getting our first graduates from the Sean Carter Scholarship Program, which is, like, for me, the best thing ever.
And it seems like a contradiction. When you think of commerce, it's meeting the needs and wants of others. You provide the music, people like it. You do well, they get the pleasure. More on investment returns, good companies. And but yet in philanthropy, if you think about it, is almost the same opposite side of the same coin, meeting the needs and wants of others. A little different way of doing it, but again, as you say, it's not just writing a check, it's making sure it's actually delivering what it's supposed to deliver.
Right.
Yeah. It's tougher than business too, Steve, because you're looking for easy things to do in business. I mean, you're looking, if people have liked drinking Coca-Cola for 100 years, they'll probably like it for another 100 years. It doesn't require any great brain power to figure that kind of thing out. But in philanthropy, often you're tackling the tougher problems of society. You're tackling things where people have applied money and intelligence before and haven't really solved the problem. I mean, education is a great example. So you're really taking on things where you're not going to succeed every time. And if you like succeeding every time, it's you have to adjust to that. If you succeed 100% of the time in philanthropy, the projects are too easy, and you've got to look for things that are important and where you may fail. Right now, Gates is working on polio eradicating. They've got 99% of the way there, but the last 1% is very tough, and nobody knows for sure whether that'll get done. We did it with smallpox in the past, and so it's a different mindset, and you don't get the same feedback you get in business either immediately.
That gets also to a universal thing, learning from mistakes. One of the things you do in your annual report, which has become a classic, is you will discuss what went wrong, like Dexter, and what you learned, and what you learned from it.
Sure.
Tough to do.
Well, it's very important to recognize mistakes. I mean, if somebody goes around and says, I never made a mistake, I mean, you quit listening to them. I mean, they're in a dream world. So facing up to it, it's a little like in terms of discussing issues. You should be able to discuss the other fellow's position just as well as you can discuss your own. So I mean, that's part of thinking well, and certainly part of making good decisions in business is recognizing the poor decisions you've made and why they were poor, and that doesn't mean you never do the same thing. I mean, because sometimes it was a freak situation, but I have made lots of mistakes. I'm going to make more mistakes, but Babe Ruth struck out a lot of times. I mean, it's the name of the game that you do it. You don't want to expect perfection in yourself. You want to strive to do your best, but it's too demanding to expect perfection in yourself, and it does some good to recognize them and not start trying to go around kidding people about them.
Getting the message out. You've done a very high-profile thing to get the message out on giving. Why, and where do you think it's going to lead? And then I want to ask Jay, very different audience, how do you get the message out on the importance of philanthropy, on helping people so they can have the opportunities you had?
Absolutely.
Well, the way I got the message out was to get a copy of Forbes and look down that 400 list and start making phone calls.
Thank you.
And Bill Gates and Belinda did the same thing, and we've only called 80 or so people so far, and some of them I know, some of them I don't know. And we've gotten way better reception. To some extent, we high-graded the mine, as they say in the mining business, so we picked people, in many cases, but not all cases, where we knew that they had pretty strong philanthropic interest. But it was very low-key, and we just asked them if they would sign a pledge, not legal but moral, that they would give away at least half of their net worth, either during their lifetimes or at death. And about half of the people that we called, maybe slightly over half, have said they'd be delighted. And we've asked them to tell their own story, and the stories are fascinating. I mean, how people got to that decision, how they evolved, how their family was involved in it, how maybe personal experiences had shaped that. But it was really very encouraging. I don't think you'd find that in any other society in the world other than the United States. And we'll see how far it goes, but if it will go further. But even if it only went as far as it's gone, it will have an impact, Steve.
So you think that even those who were giving are now, in effect, in their minds, upping it?
I think, certainly in some cases, I know that's the case. And the very fact of getting involved and spending more time thinking about it, talking with your family more about it, I don't think it ever leads to reduced giving. And I think sometimes I've seen examples of it here, it's led to more. The real interesting thing will be as if it leads to smarter giving over time. We hope to get this group together once a year and talk about, again, mistakes. But
do you see the same kind of entrepreneurship we see in commerce in philanthropy? I mean, there are a handful of large organizations, and except for Habitat for Humanity and a couple of others, they've been around for decades.
Yeah, there's some. It's harder to evaluate. It's not a market system.
Right.
I mean, you can't put out a P&L at the end of the year, and you can't measure things. You know, I don't believe in measuring quarterly results in business, but the timetable on many things is much longer in philanthropy. So it's not as easy a game to me as business, but it's an important game. And the fact that you can't do it perfectly does not mean that you should sit on the sidelines, and it does not mean you can't learn from others. I've already learned something from the 3 or 4 dinners we've had and talking to people, but the stories are interesting. People do things that are amazingly effective. They do things where they bomb for one reason or another. But we will have smarter philanthropy in this country 10 and 20 years from now, I think, than we have now. And I think in a small way this will contribute to it. So keep publishing the list so I can milk it.
JJ will soon be on it. But Jay, in terms of philanthropy, obviously you're very much focused on your business right now, as Warren was on his for a long time. But how do you get the message out to a different audience that it doesn't have to even be dollars, it's time? And what your teacher did, taking you and showing you another world, or your mother getting you emotionally with your father in a way in which you could move forward in your life and improve your life.
Yeah, I think the first step for us, because as far as entertainers, we're like the first generation to really capitalize off our talent. For many years, artists they were dying broke because the record company took advantage of them in some way, form, shape, and up. Right? This is like that really first generation. I mean, from where we're from. I'm not talking about the rock star. I'm not talking about vinyl. So the first thing for us, for me, I believe, is to lead by example and show how these things have an effect on people's lives in a real way, and to tell that story of this is the neighborhood that made me. And I know there's future generation of stars in this neighborhood as well that we must help out as well. If given the opportunity, what someone can be if given the opportunity. So my first thing is to show by example, and then I'm gonna slowly pull a guy like me and Puff made the. I think we could have done more. I think we could have visited and been there closer, but we've made a huge pledge to, Katrina together. When we did that united front and we made a donation together, it showed hip hop that sort of power of how we can get together and do these sorts of things. So again, my first thing is to do it by example and show it how it works and show the example of you know, how opportunities change.